Picture this. You're sitting in a courtroom. The prosecutor stands up and presents evidence against you. But this evidence didn't come from a detective's investigation or a witness's testimony. It came from an algorithm, a machine. A piece of code written by engineers who've never met you, never heard your story, and doesn't care about your innocence. This is happening right now, in 2026. And the terrifying part? The judge might not even tell you the algorithm exists. Welcome back to the verdict room. I'm your host, and today we're investigating the 5 most chilling cases where artificial intelligence failed justice, and where innocent people paid the price. Let's start with a case that should have shocked the nation. It's 2020. Detroit, Michigan. A man named Robert Williams is arrested outside his home in front of his family. The charge? Armed robbery. The evidence? A facial recognition algorithm. The FBI's database had run his mugshot through an AI system, identified him as a suspect, and Detroit police brought him in. Here's the problem. He didn't do it. The real robber looked nothing like him, but the algorithm was confident. It had ranked Williams as the top match, and the police believed the machine more than they trusted evidence that would eventually exonerate him. Williams spent days in custody, interrogated by detectives who believed the algorithm's certainty. It took his defense attorney fighting hard to prove his innocence, proving that the facial recognition system had a 20% error rate, with even higher error rates for black men. Williams was released, but not before his reputation was shattered, his family traumatized, and his faith in justice shaken. The shocking part: this wasn't an isolated incident. Facial recognition misidentifications have led to dozens of wrongful arrests across America. And in 2026, law enforcement agencies still don't have uniform standards for when and how to use this technology. There's no requirement to disclose to defense attorneys that AI was used. There's no regulation. The machine accuses, the system convicts, and the innocent suffer in silence. But facial recognition is just the beginning. Let's move to a case that's been haunting the criminal justice system for over a decade. It's 2013. Wisconsin. A man named Eric Loomis sits in a sentencing hearing. He's been convicted of armed robbery and fleeing police. Now comes the punishment phase, the moment when a judge decides his fate. The judge considers Loomis's background, his criminal history, his likelihood of reoffending. But the judge also considers something else, a risk assessment algorithm called Compass. Compass is an AI system designed to predict whether a criminal defendant is likely to commit another crime. It's a black box. The company that created it, Northpoint, now called Equifax Risk Solutions, keeps the exact formula secret. It's proprietary. The public can't see how it works. The algorithm analyzes hundreds of data points about Loomis, feeds them through its mysterious equations, and produces a number, a risk score. High risk. The algorithm says Loomis is dangerous. It recommends a longer sentence. The judge follows the algorithm's recommendation. Loomis gets 6 years. But here's where it gets darker. When Loomis's defense challenged the algorithm's fairness, researchers ran the numbers and found something startling. Compass was wrong about 33% of the time when predicting whether black defendants would reoffend. For white defendants, it was wrong about 40% of the time. The algorithm was systematically biased. It was telling judges that black people were more dangerous, not because of any legitimate predictive factor, but because the algorithm had learned from decades of biased criminal justice data. Biased policing, biased arrests, biased prosecution. The algorithm absorbed all that bias and amplified it. In 2016, the Wisconsin Supreme Court upheld Loomis's conviction despite evidence of algorithmic bias. The court ruled that even though the algorithm might be biased, judges could still consider it at sentencing as long as they didn't rely on it solely. But here's the reality. In courtrooms across America in 2026, judges are still using Compass and similar risk assessment tools. They're still sentencing people based on predictions made by algorithms that nobody fully understands and that discriminate against minorities. And defendants rarely know it's happening. This is the chilling reality of AI in the legal system. The machines are making decisions about your freedom, your future, your life. And you might never even know they're there. But the bias problem goes even deeper. Let's look at a case from 2023 that shows how AI can corrupt even the most basic evidence. A murder case in Texas. The prosecution wants to prove that the defendant wrote a threatening letter. Handwriting analysis, it sounds scientific, right? But for decades, it's been called junk science by forensic experts. Two people's handwriting can look similar. Experts disagree. It's subjective. So what does law enforcement do? They turn to AI. They feed images of known handwriting samples into machine learning algorithms. The algorithm learns patterns. It analyzes the questioned letter. It renders a verdict. Match or no match. The problem is devastating. These AI handwriting systems are trained on datasets that can be skewed, incomplete, or biased. An algorithm trained on thousands of samples from one demographic group might perform poorly on samples from other groups. Judges and juries don't understand these limitations. They see the computer's conclusion and think it's objective fact. But it's not. It's a probabilistic guess wrapped in a cloak of mathematical authority. In the Texas case, the AI flagged the defendant as a match with 94% confidence. The prosecution presented this in court as near certain proof. But independent experts brought in by the defense showed that the algorithm had never been properly validated, had never been tested for bias, and had error rates the prosecution never disclosed. The defendant was wrongfully convicted based on an AI system that shouldn't have been allowed in court. He was eventually exonerated, but only after 3 years in prison. 3 years. Because we trusted a machine more than we trusted evidence. And then there's a threat on the horizon that keeps forensic scientists and prosecutors awake at night. It's 2024, a high-profile sexual assault case. The victim identifies the defendant in court. Seems straightforward, right? Except the defense attorney shows something shocking. A deepfake video. The prosecution's key piece of evidence, video footage of the crime, might have been artificially manipulated. The defendant's lawyers use AI detection tools to argue that the video was synthesized, that it's not real evidence at all. But here's the problem. The same AI tools that created the deepfake can also dispute it. If the prosecution uses one AI system to create evidence and the defense uses another to claim it's fake, how does a jury decide what's real? In 2026, we don't have clear legal standards for admitting or excluding AI-generated evidence. Courts are struggling. Some judges let it in, some exclude it. There's no consistency. There's no protection. Imagine being on trial for a crime you didn't commit. The prosecution has a video that looks like you committing that crime. You claim it's a deep fake. But the jury doesn't understand AI. The judge hasn't received training on digital forensics. Your defense attorney is fighting an uphill battle against invisible technology, and you could go to prison for something you never did. This is happening now. In 2026, deepfake evidence has already appeared in at least 2 criminal trials in California and 1 in Florida. The courts didn't know how to handle it. The trials resulted in convictions and acquittals that might have been completely different if the evidence had been properly understood. But the most insidious use of AI in the legal system might be the one you've never heard of. It's called predictive policing. The idea is simple. Use algorithms to predict where crimes will happen and deploy police there. The AI analyzes historical crime data and creates heat maps. High-crime neighborhoods get more police presence. Sounds rational, right? But here's the trap. Historical crime data reflects decades of biased policing. Certain neighborhoods were over-policed because of racism. Certain demographics were arrested at higher rates because of discrimination. The algorithm looks at this data and learns. Crimes happen in these neighborhoods. Crimes are committed by people from these demographics. So it recommends sending more police to those neighborhoods. More police means more arrests. More arrests means more data confirming the algorithm's original bias. More biased data means a more biased algorithm. It's a cycle, a vicious, self-reinforcing cycle that systematically targets communities of color. In Chicago, in Los Angeles, in Baltimore, predictive policing algorithms have been deployed for years. Communities have fought back. The ACLU has published reports. But in 2026, these systems are still in use, and they're still wrong. They're still biased, they're still destroying innocent people's lives. One case from 2021 that perfectly illustrates this. A A young man in a predicted high-crime area was stopped by police based partly on algorithmic predictions. He was innocent. No crime was being committed, but the algorithm said police should be there, so they were. And his life was disrupted because a machine decided his neighborhood was suspicious. So here's the question that the legal system hasn't adequately answered. What do we do about this? In 2026, there are some guardrails. The Fourth Amendment still protects against unreasonable searches and seizures, but facial recognition and predictive policing exist in a gray area. Evidence obtained through AI must still meet the rules of evidence under the federal rules of evidence, but judges often don't understand AI well enough to properly evaluate it. Some states have passed laws requiring disclosure when AI is used in criminal proceedings, but compliance is inconsistent. The Innocence Project has documented dozens of cases where AI played a role in wrongful convictions, and they're calling for reform. But the Supreme Court hasn't definitively ruled on algorithmic bias in sentencing since that Wisconsin case with Loomis. Congress hasn't passed comprehensive legislation regulating AI in the criminal justice system. And the companies developing these tools, they operate with minimal oversight. In 2024, the DOJ issued guidance recommending that prosecutors disclose when they use AI to identify suspects. But it's just guidance, not law, not binding, and many prosecutors still don't comply. In 2025, some legal scholars and civil rights organizations called for an outright ban on facial recognition in law enforcement until the technology becomes more accurate and less biased. But no federal ban exists. No national standard exists. Here's what we know. The machines are in the courtroom. They're making decisions about people's freedom, and we don't have adequate legal frameworks to control them. The frightening reality is this, and I want you to sit with this for a moment. An algorithm could be deciding your fate right now, and you might never know it. You might be convicted based on evidence you're never allowed to see. You might be sentenced based on a risk assessment calculated by a system with hidden biases. You might be arrested because a machine predicted you'd commit a crime. You might be wrongfully imprisoned because a deepfake video looked convincing, or because facial recognition made a 20% error, or because a machine decided your neighborhood was suspicious. And the law hasn't caught up. The law is still operating on principles designed for the analog age. Right to confront your accuser. But what if your accuser is an algorithm? Right to see the evidence against you. But what if that evidence was created by AI code you can't understand? Presumption of innocence. But what if a risk assessment algorithm has already condemned you? Here's what needs to happen. First, transparency. Every time AI is used in a criminal case, defendants and judges must know about it. No exceptions. Second, validation. Before any AI system is used in courts, it must be independently tested for accuracy and bias. Third, regulation. Congress needs to pass laws setting national standards for AI in law enforcement and the courts. And fourth, accountability. When AI systems make mistakes and ruin lives, someone needs to be held responsible. But until that happens, and in 2026, it's still not happening, innocent people will continue to be wrongfully convicted by machines. The Innocence Project will continue to exonerate people imprisoned by flawed algorithms. And the legal system will continue to trust technology it doesn't fully understand. The question isn't whether we should be worried about AI in the courtroom. The question is, why aren't we more worried? Why are we letting machines decide human fates without understanding how those machines work? Why are we accepting algorithmic bias as the cost of efficiency? Why are we pretending that justice is better served by a risk assessment tool created by a corporation than by a judge who actually looks at the person in front of them? The future of justice depends on how we answer these questions now, not tomorrow, not after more innocent people go to prison. But now, I'm your host from the Verdict Room. If this investigation into AI in the legal system disturbed you, and it should, please hit that subscribe button. We're covering the most important cases in America, the ones that affect your rights, your freedom, your justice. Drop a comment below. Should AI be allowed in the courtroom at all? Or should we ban it until we solve the bias problem? Your verdict matters. We'll see you next time on the Verdict Room.